Hey, hey. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Chase Coleman. I'm at UMA, and I've been at UMA for about a year. I am a native Austinite, so welcome to those of you out of town, to everyone from here. You know, it's good to be home. So UMA, so here we go. So my talk, I'm actually giving a different talk than I told the organizers I was going to give. And the talk I'm going to give is, why does Web3 need more oracles? And so, there we go. So oracles need to be flexible enough to create generalized contracting beyond price feeds. So that's going to be kind of my thesis here. There's lots of information in the world, and if you think about what oracles are doing right now, is it basically says, you know, I need to know the price of ETH in order to make some transaction, and an oracle will give you that price. But there's a lot of other information that you might want to transact on, and we want to make sure that people can actually transact on that information. And we'll talk about some examples. So what does an oracle do? The job of an oracle is to take some type of information that's not on the blockchain and move it onto the blockchain. Now, why do you need to do this? Well, because there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in the world around us, and the blockchain is great at, you know, taking transactions and putting them into blocks, but it doesn't know anything about anything else. It's just a consensus mechanism. And so the oracle takes this information and it moves it to the blockchain, and it allows us to trigger some type of an event based on a smart contract. I think a lot of the applications, at least in DeFi, are, you know, something like a derivative contract, where if the price of Apple goes above X, then I make money, and if it goes below Y, you make money, or something like that. And one of the big, I think, successes recently has been, there's been a big movement away from single points of failure. And I think decentralization is obviously a spectrum, but there was a while where you basically had like a centralized oracle. So Coinbase will give you like a signed price that you can then take on chain. And people were using that until one day it was manipulated. And shit hit the fan, and like money disappeared. And that doesn't feel good. Like, you don't want your money to disappear. And so we've moved towards more decentralized and more kind of oracles that have less points of failure. And I think that's been a really good thing. And if we think about the type of data that we might want to transact on, I think there's probably like the distribution of data is probably something like there's a few really high value types of data. But there's a lot of data in the world, and you want to be able to contract on all of it. And so we think about data as kind of this like long-tailed distribution, is that there's lots of things that are maybe really easy to find that produce tons of value, but there's other things that are much harder to ask about that are also important, and like we don't want to limit ourselves to what we can build. So we have to find a way to be able to cover this entire spectrum of data. And there's so when we think about the current Oracle space, and this is kind of what I was saying, is the biggest application right now is something like a price feed. Now, these price feed oracles, one of my coworkers wrote most of these slides, so he called it the proof of work oracle, but I think about it as more of like a push oracle, which is every hour on the hour, a price is pushed onto the blockchain. You know, sun, rain, snow, whatever, like they're going to push a new price every hour. Now, this is really great for certain types of things. So does everyone know what a flash loan is? So flash loans are just like fucking awesome. And so to use a flash loan, what you need is like some atomicness. And in order to have that atomicness, you need something like this, because this data has to be available on the blockchain already. But you know, that means you're going to limit yourself to certain types of data that are easily available. You know, so that's like there's some big pros, but the cons are, you know, you're limiting yourself to different types of data. And also that's like really expensive, right? Like blockchains are effectively really inefficient SQL databases. And you know, if you can avoid putting data on chain, or if you can avoid doing computation on chain, you should. So if we think about kind of this distribution of data, we think, at least through now, the highest value type of data are these prices. And I think there's a lot of projects that are doing a really good job at pushing these prices on chain. And again, like that is the natural place to start, right? If you're thinking about like, where is my marginal benefit? Boom, right here. Now, there's a different kind of model that you could approach this with, and UMA builds what we call an optimistic oracle. And the optimistic is actually in the same sense that you think about like a roll-up is optimistic, which is, I'm going to tell you that this thing is true, and as long as no one says, hey, that's not true, we're going to agree that it's true. So what's great about this is, you can build a network of proposers and disputers in the same way that these roll-ups are doing something like this. And you can get people to kind of give you any type of data. It doesn't have to be from a particular source. You can ask very general questions. You could say, will Tesla release a new car this year? Will World War III start in the next month? Like, you can ask really broad questions that don't necessarily have a particular expiration, but that might require kind of a flexible data methodology. Like, you need some type of a human to kind of figure out how to answer certain questions. Now, our goal isn't to build like a court system. I think there are other projects that are doing things like that and kind of things that don't have a clear answer. We're just trying to focus on things that actually have a yes or no answer, something that you can provide an answer to. One of the kind of side effects of these optimistic oracles is you actually add recourse to a lot of these contracts. So if you think about some of these big DeFi hacks, either through this like centralized Oracle exploit that I just talked about, like what happened is, the exploit happened, the money was gone, and that was the end of the story. An optimistic Oracle has kind of a dispute period where you could actually contest what happened. And there are use cases, again, like when you're doing something with a flash loan, you don't have this option. You need instant finality. You need this to happen right away. But if I'm making a bet on a soccer game, I don't think I mind waiting like some amount of time in order to settle that contract. I don't need this instantaneous resolution. I want the ability where if someone lies and says, I don't know, who played in the Super Bowl this year? I don't even remember at this point. It's been a long year. But if someone said that the losing team won and we're able to get that on chain, like, I don't want that. Like, I'd rather have some type of a chance to have some sort of recourse or to be able to contest what they said. And so UMA is really focused on what other type of data can we put on chain? What other types of questions can we answer? And how can we make sure that it's right? So what goes into an optimistic oracle? So the first is we need a requester, proposer, and disputer network. And we're going to talk about how all of those come into play in 1 second. We need some kind of a dispute resolution process. If you say something is true and I say, wait, no, it's not, like, how do we tell who's right? We need a way to be able to do that. We need some type of a source so that we all are finding the truth the same way. So you need some kind of like a process that someone could walk through. Go to the Tesla website. Do they have a new car this year? Yes, no. The end. And then the thing that I think is important, and this is, I think, all oracles really focus on this, is you want to provide some kind of an economic guarantee, right? So like the problem with using a centralized exchange's price is that they don't have necessarily an economic incentive in providing you a price. They could just give you whatever and it doesn't affect them. What you want to do is you want to make sure that if something bad is proposed by the oracle, that it causes a lot of pain to people who are stakeholders in the oracle. And so you want to make sure that people are incentivized to do the right thing. So we actually, this is kind of exciting. So one of the products that UMA supplies data to is a predictions market. And there was some sports game somewhere last night. Now, in the last 5 minutes of the game, I'm rambling, but this is kind of a fun story. So in the last 5 minutes of the game, basically people during the game were trading live and they realized that Team X was going to lose. So someone came in and bought all of the positions at Team X for less than a cent. And they actually tried to corrupt our oracle last night. And so they said, hey, wait, Team X won, even though they had lost. And it was pretty exciting. So even before our team had realized this, there were 2 disputes submitted in the same block. And one person then sped theirs up when they saw that the other person had also tried to dispute, because there's monetary incentive to successfully dispute. And so the person who tried to corrupt our oracle failed. Money was made, money was lost by the bad actor, and life was good. So the optimistic oracle, the way it works is you ask a question, did team X win or did team Y win? Now, someone can go and answer that question, but to answer that question, they post a bond. So I think it was, $2,500 last night is, I'm gonna say, put $2,500 to say team X won. Because if, this person thought if they fail to dispute me, I'm gonna make, $50,000 or $100,000. So does someone dispute it? Now, this is open for, I think on prediction markets, our liveness period is 2 hours. So this question is there for 2 hours, and someone can dispute it. If no one disputes it, after 2 hours, this person could have walked away with whatever money they made. Now, that didn't happen, so they got disputed within, like 2 or 3 minutes of the game ending. And so they posted their bond, and then a disputer said, I'll bet you $2,500 that didn't happen. And so now it's a dispute. So how does this get resolved? This is going to move to UMA's data verification machine, which is basically we have an economically incentivized way to get all of the UMA holders to vote and resolve this dispute. And so, so now this is going to go to a vote. It's going to take a little bit longer. Again, like there are time costs to doing something like this. But at the end of the day, the disputer just probably made about $2,000. The person who answered the question lost $2,500 because you want them to burn more money than the disputer makes. We could talk through all of that, but so that's how it works. And there's like a real live example. So the goal obviously is like you don't want these disputes, right? Because like it costs time, it costs money, but as long as people believe in the system, for the same reason optimistic rollups go is like it's just like a threat, right? Like, hey, like do the right thing. If you don't, we will like punish you. But as long as no one does the wrong thing, the system works quite quickly. And so this was kind of a big success. So some of the things that are being built with UMA right now, this prediction markets platform, we've been doing some DeFi insurance specifically around hacks. So if y'all have heard of Sherlock or HATS, they're both kind of insurance protocols to provide insurance against different types of hacks or bounties for white hat hackers. We have something new we're dabbling with on optimistic governance. So thinking about, how can you govern on L2s when your token lives on L1 or something like that. We have a big set of things that we do that are rewards as a service or KPI options. So a lot of people, or some people have probably heard of KPI options. I'm happy to shill them to you after this talk. And then kind of what UMA was originally known for was synthetic assets. But again, kind of all of these are applications of our Oracle. Now, when we think about kind of where ETH is going and like where the Ethereum network and kind of community is going, is there's a big focus on L2s. So kind of to showcase some of the flexibility that we had, we built an L2 bridge that can move, that moves money between chains using our Oracle service. I'd love to talk to you about that, but I'm running out of time and I want to leave time for a couple questions. And then you can also think about how you might do cross-chain data validation. So moving data from L2 to L1 right now, because of this, the optimistic waiting period or whatever, it can take 7 days. But if you trust, the incentives of the optimistic oracle, we could potentially get that done faster with the fallback of the 7 days. So if you're willing to accept kind of a 2-hour dispute period instead of the 7-day, you could build kind of some data verification and data validation between different chains. I have an example. I'm going to skip it. And then kind of just going to wrap up is, so the answer to why we need more oracles is you can still build price feeds using different types of oracles. We think there are some benefits to using kind of this optimistic approach because it adds recourse and your money doesn't disappear as quickly in the bad case. You can build data feeds on anything that's verifiable. So a lot of the examples we discussed today were off-chain, but there have also been some examples of people who want to do things with data from on-chain, but the computation is expensive. And so they use the optimistic oracle to provide an answer, and if someone disputes it, they turn to the really expensive computation on L1. It works well cross-chain, and it's an efficient use of needing to be on chain. So that's everything I have. The one thing I want to advertise is I think kind of most projects feel this way, but we take talent and culture seriously. So I've really liked being here. We're currently hiring, like everyone, so we're looking for front-end engineers, full stack software engineers, smart contract. We're looking for a remote office manager. You can apply to all of these positions at this link, and I'll post these slides somewhere. Now, what happens if you don't fit any of those positions, but kind of you're kind, smart, self-starter, adaptable, and want to be part of something that we think is going to be big? Please reach out directly to hiring@umaproject.org. We're always willing to hire kind of smart, talented people. I think, so on my onboarding interview, one of our, I don't know anyone's title actually, but Melissa, I asked her, well, what is it like to be at UMA? She said, well, I'll tell you two things. We work hard, but the most important thing is don't be an asshole. So, so I think I'd summarize our culture as don't be an asshole. We'd love for people to build on the optimistic Oracle. I'm so glad to be here in Austin, and that's everything I have to say. 3 minutes. Can I get 2 questions?
Do they have to stay involved?
No, but I kind of like that. That seems like a really reasonable use of the optimistic Oracle. We do have, if you scan that link, we have a cool referrals program. So even if you aren't looking, but someone is, but we use the optimistic Oracle basically, if someone's employed for 3, 6 months, or a year with us, you get an increasing amount of rewards for what you do. Okay, I'll be.
I got a question, I guess.
Yeah, shoot away.
I don't know if I formed it correctly. Do you see an advantage to projects integrating with multiple oracles, or do you see a zero-sum game where winners get to all down the road?
I think there are different use cases, and I think I tried to convey that a little. Is something like a price feed kind of makes sense. A lot of people are going to be using it at different intervals, so it's not that much of a waste to push data frequently. So I think there are room for different solutions for different projects. So again, this opportunity for recourse on the predictions market, that can be, in this case, I don't know what an API would look like for that, but clearly someone tried to corrupt this, they failed, and as long as people didn't mind waiting this extra liveness period amount of time, I think it pays big benefits. I'm happy to chat more about that. I have lots of opinions on it. But I'm being signaled from behind. So I will see you all. I'll be here today and tomorrow.